were you smoking? What were you taking?
I was taking crack cocaine all that period.
Pain and joy, I've had it all, had it all. Can I tell you my story? Oh, this is mine.
Welcome to the Ian Show. My name is Emily, and today I am on set with Tapiwa. And Tapiwa, our conversation started last week when we were talking about how you started taking drugs. You ended up with a family that literally took over your life for a year. And at the time, what were you smoking? What were you taking?
I was taking crack cocaine all that period.
Okay.
Yeah.
And crack cocaine was one of many. And like I was telling you, I was watching, an interview that Whitney Houston did with Diane Sawyer, who is one of probably the most prominent journalists in the States. And Diane asked Whitney and said, "What is your devil?" And Whitney looked into the camera literally and said, "I'm the devil." And what she was meaning was that no matter what drug she took, it was by choice that she was taking that drug. And so it wasn't the drug, but it was her. How do you feel about that? What is your devil? Is it, what is your devil?
Look, Emily, I think that the only choice we really have when we take drugs is the first time we take it. Because everything after that is you're powerless. You are not in your right state of mind. You have no control over your feelings, your thoughts. Even though there are some cases where people were strong enough to say no, even after they had started, it's not everyone who has that power to do that.
So are you saying that when we as families say to our loved ones, what does that do to someone who literally is at a point where, because some people say it's a disease and the addiction is so big that it actually needs medical intervention?
It actually is a disease. I'd like to think it's a disease because the moment you start taking drugs, everything in your normal mind changes. And you start thinking differently, you start living differently. And like I said in the previous episode, it's a lifestyle. So once you start adjusting to that lifestyle, it's hard for anyone to think that you have enough power to say no and to stop. There are very few cases, and I believe those cases are God's grace, where people can actually say, no, I'm done, I'm enough. And I am one example of that.
Rehab, you never thought about going to rehab?
Look, the issue was brought up by my mom quite a few times because she was going through the most pain watching me doing what I was doing. I attended a few NA meetings, but they proved to be fruitless because me and some of the other addicts in those meetings would relapse, the very next day. So for me, I don't know. I just felt sitting around people who are going through the same thing, depressed, thinking about using, doesn't really help.
But so one of the other key things that you shared, Tapiwa, was that you went home. After you left this family, you managed to leave.
Yeah.
You went home and you saw your mom.
Yes.
She had lost weight. Tell me about that moment.
Actually, she wasn't doing that bad yet because she didn't really know as much as she did later in life when I changed from crack cocaine to crystal meth.
Which is a second phase.
That is my second, that is the last phase of my addiction life, where crack cocaine became too expensive because I lost jobs, like I said. And crystal meth was more easily accessible. And that's when I turned into a monster. Mutoriro.
Okay.
They call Mutoriro, yeah.
Okay.
That's when I became a monster. That's when I would wake up at 2 a.m. in the morning because I was living with her now, because I'd lost everything. Wake up at 2 a.m. in the morning to open the door for me. And being a mother, she's not going to let you sleep outside. She would open the door, literally say a few words, shout, and I would turn her down quickly, tell her to just relax, I'm okay, go and sleep. And when I slept for days. So I was basically just going back home just to recover, gain some weight, go back to the streets.
Wow.
And this is when I saw what it was doing to my mother. And that's when I made some decisions in my life, although I didn't stop immediately, but that's when certain decisions were made in my life.
But when you spoke about your mom and seeing your mom go through it, there's one part that you really mentioned that really touched you, touched your soul, which I think could have been your second rock bottom moment.
Yeah.
Maybe tell me about that moment where you saw her and you cried.
My mom used to bake scones and what they call magwinya in South Africa, or fat cooks, yeah. So she would prepare the dough every night before. So I saw her one night, she was sitting there busy kneading a dough, and I'm looking at her and I'm thinking, my mom has lost so much weight. You could see her cheekbones popping out, and she's a healthy, woman. So I'm thinking, why is she like this? Why is she not speaking anymore? For that brief moment, I came to my senses, and I said to myself, I am the reason why my mother is in this state.
Wow.
I am the oldest, I'm the firstborn. I have 2 siblings looking up to me, and they also, bickering at me for what I'm doing to my mom. So I'm thinking, if she dies tomorrow and we have to bury her, no one else is responsible but me.
So that was your moment where you started taking accountability.
That's when I started doing things a bit differently, and I started to pray a bit more, no matter where I was.
We're going to talk about prayer, which is very important, but we're going to take a break, Tapiwa. And when we come back, I want you to talk about how you used to smoke and pray at the same time. This is EN. We are talking with Tapiwa. We are talking drug and substance abuse. We'll be right back. Welcome back to EN. Tapiwa, I think for me, we have done a great job in really talking to our audience and showing them the journey that you have gone. But my question for me was there ever a moment where you saw something very horrific that happened during your years of using? Something that really touched your soul, and how do you deal with those memories? Because that can't be easy. So you probably have these demons that really come back to you and plague your memory. How are you dealing with that? So first, what was that incident, and then maybe talk about how are you,
I think what I've seen during my using days is nothing compared to what happened after I stopped.
Wow.
I think a week after I decided to stop, one of the guys I used to walk around with a lot had acquired 2 firearms. And he went back to the neighborhood we used to, stay in, brandishing them. And he was showing the community that he's got firearms now, he's big, no one can touch him. And I heard the story that the community got a hold of him and they laid him on the ground and they put his head on a stoop. And one of the guys picked up 2 guys picked up a big boulder and they smashed his head, and he lost his life that day.
Wow.
And
you were with this guy?
Before.
Right before?
Like a week before.
Wow.
A week before it happened, I was with him. So if I hadn't left if I hadn't left drugs, if I hadn't stopped using drugs, I'd probably be with him at that time. And I keep telling myself that second firearm could have been mine. I think that's the most horrific yet gratifying experience I've ever experienced, because the fact that God took me out just in time shows me where I could have been, and shows me that His grace is enough,
So when you say that you really had that connection with God, regardless, I think, of what the addiction may be, regardless of what life brings to you as an individual, I know that I've sought God, and I've just said, I'm surrendering myself to you. What was that moment where you did that, and why did you do that? So was it because you realized that no one else in your family could help you, and it had to be a decision that you made? But what brought you to that point where you fell on your knees and you actually gave your life to Christ?
I'm going to be brutally honest. With me, I just went to sleep one day, and I woke up the next day, and I was a different person. I can't explain how, I can't explain why, but that's exactly what happened. What I do know is the amount of prayer that was going about my family and friends for me was amazing. It was, everyone was praying for me. I started praying for myself with that incident with my mom. When I saw her that night, I started using and smoking before and after praying. So I would say a little prayer, close my eyes, God, please take me out of this. This is not for me. I open my eyes, I take a pipe and I light it and I smoke. And people would look at me and be like, hey, what are you doing? I'm like, no. Deep down, I know why I'm doing it, because I want to stop. And that's the most important thing. When you want to stop and you seek God, He will listen to you. You know, there's a lot of people out there who want to stop. A lot of people out there have lost all hope. They think that this is their life and it's not going to change until they die, which is not true. There's always hope for you to stop. There's never anything nice with substance abuse. Never. Absolutely nothing, anything nice. There's nothing special about or nice about not being in control of your own thoughts. There's nothing nice about that. There's nothing attractive about that. You know, you don't want to take a bath, you lose control of yourself. It's absolutely, you know, so for me, I think I was just sick and tired of being sick and tired when I went to sleep that night. And I'm pretty sure I said a prayer, but I always pray every time before I sleep. So it was nothing special or extraordinary that night. I went to sleep normally, woke up the next day, and I was just done.
But I think you reached a point where, you know, mentally, and maybe you were not even cognizant of it, where you just said to yourself, I'm now choosing me, I'm fighting for myself and no one else. So in listening to your story, I think one of the key things that I you know, want people to understand is that family members who see people going through it, it's so important to stick by their side. What would you have wanted to tell your family that at that moment when you wanted to get out? Because seeing it from a different perspective, they're probably doubting, is he serious? Is he genuine? Is he going to do this? What would you wanted? What was on your heart at the time?
At the time, I needed help so much, but I was so embarrassed at my state then, in terms of my physical state, my just the way I was living. It was embarrassing. I could not tell anyone about it. I mean, I used to go through dustbins, you know,
Dustbins?
I used to go through dustbins. Well, they're much cleaner there in South Africa, but then I would go through looking for little ornaments or jewelry, or, you know, because a lot of people used to throw away expensive things. We'd go to the top neighborhoods and go through their bins. And me sitting here right now, no one would believe that, you know, but I did these things, you know. And so all these things were so embarrassing for me to come out and say, listen, this is what I'm going through. But as I sit here now, and as I remember how gracious God has been in my life, there's nothing embarrassing about what I went through. Whatever you're going through is not embarrassing. Mm-hmm. First of all, because you're not the only one going through it. There's many people going through it, whatever it is.
So don't isolate yourself and begin to think that it is a you problem.
Never isolate yourself. No matter what your situation is, someone else is going through worse, you know? And also you need to reach out. You need to tell someone. I had a cousin, her name is Charlene. She would drive every time I didn't have anything to eat. I would call her, KFC, I need KFC, please. She would come and see me as I am. She would cry tears looking at me, and I would assure her that I'm okay. That's the one person I confided in. But whereas if I had told my mom and dad earlier, I believe I would have gone the rehab route and etc. So I think everything happened according to God's plan. You know, He heard my cry and He took me out at the right time.
And I think, you know, the doctors that I've spoken to have been very clear. You cannot help someone who is in a severe state of addiction if they don't want to be helped. Don't even waste your money. Don't even waste your time. But all you can do is pray for them to reach that point, because outside of that, you can put people through rehab, you can put people through counseling, but until someone reaches that point by themselves, which I think is where you are at. So Tapiwa, we're going to take a break, but when we come back, I want us to talk about, finally, what are the signs that people need to look out for What are the signs that we need to look out for? Where can we seek help? You know, we need to start solutioning.
Yes.
And it's great that we're talking about this, but we need people to leave with some knowledge.
Yeah.
Okay.
Most definitely.
This is EN. I'm with Tapiwa, and we will be right back. Welcome back to EN. Tapiwa, we were talking about what are the signs that we need to look out for. So how do we recognize that my child, my husband, my spouse? Because I think another misconception is that it's only young people who are going through this, but it's older people, it's professionals, like I said in my intro, people who we work with. How do we start looking out for those signs, and what are those signs?
I think for the younger generation, the first signs to look for, you know how they say catch them while they're young?
Right.
I think for parents, it's very important to listen to your children, especially when they're quiet. When they say nothing, when they are keeping to themselves, when they like to lock themselves in the room and they don't talk about, you know, what's happening at school and who's my friend and what's going on, then I think you should worry.
Then we have a problem.
We have a problem because remember, children spend most of their time at school. They spend more time at school than at home, you know? So I think with children, those are the signs to look for.
But on that note, there are parents that probably don't even spend time at home.
Yeah. And that's where the problem starts. It's unfortunate, but then I don't want to blame parents for everything because we do get to an age sometimes where we can make sure, like you said, someone old can be caught by this disease.
Right.
But the way we are groomed and the way we are brought up has a huge effect on how we turn out in the end. For the older people, the signs are clear. You know, lack of concentration. If you see someone who used to be very active, likes to sleep a lot. If you see someone who you know to be decent, you know, and things start just messing around the house and you don't know how they're going, it's probably that person is addicted to something that they need to sustain. And also just general behavior. You know, if people are just outbursts of just anger and you don't know where it's coming from, you know, that's something to worry about.
I think deep down, as a parent, deep down in your soul, you know that there's something wrong.
Yeah.
There's something, and you know, we may call it a gut instinct, but I also believe that it's the Holy Spirit that speaks to us and that says, you know what, you need to be cautious about this one. You need to look at this one. I know that when some of my kids have been in dire straits, I wake up in the middle of the night and I'll look for them because I know something is telling me that I need to check up on this one. So I think for me, the key message for parents is that don't doubt that gut feeling. You know, start the conversation. The conversations are never easy because you will lash out. Did you ever lash out at relatives? Is there anyone who you feel like you need to apologize to? Because there's a lot of emotion in your journey. Your journey is not just overnight. It's over a period of time. People have probably tried to intervene and even, you know, try and help you. And you probably lashed out. Do you have relatives? Do you have people in your life who you would have wanted to probably say sorry to? I
think I've made amends where amends were due. But the most important person in my life is my mom. And I feel she knows this already, but she knows that how sorry I am. And she loves me for who I am now. She's proud of me now for what I've achieved. And everyone else, I think I've touched and said sorry to whoever I had to apologize to. But I just want to let it be known that to the addict, I know there's a lot of people out there who are struggling.
Yep.
I used to live in the streets. I know the ins, the outs, the ways that everything that we do here in Zimbabwe. I know there's these little parties that are happening, house parties where these things go on and these kids think it's fun. They think it's okay because everyone else is doing it. Life is an individual project, okay? You are not going to take anyone to the grave with you. You're not going to take anyone to hospital with you. Whenever you're caught alone. So if someone ever offers you to try this, something that you don't know, you're very, very free to say no. That's one thing people need to understand. A lot of people will try. One thing with addicts is they don't like to be addicted alone. They always try and get someone to join them because they know that their life is going down the drain. So they want someone else to go down the drain with them.
Okay.
So
and it's a lonely path. It's lonely.
It's very lonely because what is going on at their house is not what's going on at my house.
Yeah.
My parents are not treating me the same way. Some people get drugs from their parents, and you want to follow that path and think it's okay, but your parents don't allow it. So you should never, ever emulate anyone else when it comes to drug abuse or substance abuse, because at the end of the day, you are alone. When you go to jail, you're alone. When you go to hospital, you're alone.
So, Tapiwa, you are now working, or you are starting to work with people who either have loved ones who just need someone to offload and talk to, who's gone through, what do you see in the near future?
Look, I never expected to be doing things like this, but God's grace can never be questioned. If this is my path, then this is my path. I did a talk a few weeks back at Prince Edward, and I was approached by a few parents who wanted me to talk to their children. And I did it once, I tried it again, and I saw that, listen, I'm actually getting through to someone. So I've been talking to your guest for your very first show, Kumbi.
Yes.
From Healing Rain.
Yes.
He's doing amazing work with addicts. And we've been talking, it's in the pipeline. And I'm hoping to go on board and join him. But in the next few years, I see myself as a God-fearing man with a beautiful family. And hopefully I aspire to be a philanthropist because I want to help out there. I know what's out there and we have to fight it. There's so much evil out there we don't understand.
And we have to fight it.
We have to fight it.
Because the reality, I think when we were discussing, the reality is that this is a fight.
It's a fight. It's a battle.
And if we don't fight, and sometimes you get tired in the fight, but you need to recuperate and you need to energize and you need to go back to the battle.
Again. Yeah.
Because if you don't fight for your child, who will?
No one will.
If you don't fight for your neighbor, who will? If you don't fight for your spouse, who will? And I think those are very powerful words. Tapiwa, Tabani, Matthew, Chandavengerwa, it has been an absolute pleasure to have you on the Ian Show. And I just want to say thank you so much for sharing your story. It has not been an easy journey for you. And just being in your presence and understanding where you're coming from, I know that this story is going to touch people. And this is why on the Ian Show, we're always saying, I'm sharing my story because it's either I want to inspire or I want to inspire for change. So thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you very much, Emily. I just want to, just in parting, I want to tell the addict out there that you don't want to get high. You don't want that life. That's what I'm going to say.
Yeah.
You don't want that life.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is the end of a 2-part series on drug and substance abuse. The reason why at the Ian Show we share these stories is because we want you to start the conversations in your homes. We want you to start the conversations in your community, in your church. You have to start the fight. Don't wait for someone to commit suicide. Don't wait for someone to self-harm. Don't wait for someone to disappear from your life because you could have done something. So we hope that this will start a conversation. This is EN, sending love and light your way.